Story 1. I had an ex who stalked me for years, even after I got married and had children. She eventually married my brother-in-law, and it was very awkward until she died of a fentanyl overdose. Story 2. The person was telling me we should get married and I should be a stepfather to her children by the end of the first week. She was still married. Story 3. I met a man who had a child from a previous relationship, and she was severely disabled. He claimed he was seeing her, but he wasn't. He pretended to be on a call with the mother and said, "Don't worry about the council tax bill. I'll pay it." I thought he was a supportive, lovely, kind, and caring father taking care of his child and his ex. Fast forward, I felt pregnant, but I wasn't worried because he seemed like a great father. However, he ended up being extremely abusive and a predator. He committed arson numerous times. His fifth child with the fifth mother was born in January. He had just been released from prison for strangling the fifth mother while she was pregnant. After our relationship, he had a relationship with a man, and I learned that he physically assaulted him. I informed the police. Last night, someone tried to break into my home, and I'm assuming it was him since he is now out of prison. When I first met him, he had a job, didn't drink, and seemed like a great guy. But when I became pregnant, his true colors emerged. He strangled me, threatened me, and subjected me to so much psychological abuse that I still haven't recovered 15 years later. He messed with my mind so badly that I didn't know what was real anymore. He is a true psychopath. He saw a psychiatrist for a while, and she reported him to the police for his obsession with firearms, resulting in the loss of his gun license. If anyone is the epitome of evil, it's him. I can't even recount all the horrific things he's done because I'd be here forever. He poisoned his grandmother with bleach in her vodka, as she was an alcoholic, and he poisoned one of his children by putting nail polish remover in her medication while she was a baby and had cancer. He is deeply evil, and there's no helping someone like that. He has now latched onto his next victim and managed to convince her that all 5 of his children's mothers are the horrible ones and that he is merely a poor victim. He is 38 and she is in her 60s, so she should know better. She was also his drug counselor but was fired because of their relationship. I try not to judge because I know how manipulative he is. But seriously? Story 4. Oh, she ran at me nude with a knife. The night before, she asked me to make a baby instead of just making love. Story 5. She wanted an open relationship but did not want me to see anyone else because she was worried they would take me away from her. Story 6. She wanted to harm me. I'm not overreacting. She had a kink that I wasn't comfortable with. She was a necrophile and wanted to do terrible things to me. When she expressed this, I left. Story 7. When I was 18, I dated a guy who seemed fairly normal, just a bit socially awkward and nerdy. He was not much different from me in that aspect. I ended up breaking up with him after about 2 months because I was losing interest in the relationship, and he needed more attention than I was willing to give at the time. When he found out I was talking to someone else a month later, he started sending me really cryptic messages. One message I remember well was when he told me about a really happy couple he saw on his campus and proceeded to describe how he fantasized about luring them into the woods, knocking them both out, tying them to trees, and waiting for them to wake up before setting the girlfriend on fire and making the boyfriend watch as she burned to death before then burning the boyfriend alive as well. He also messaged me that he planned to brutally assault me, kill me, and leave my naked body in a ditch to rot. Additionally, he proceeded to stalk me online for years. Story 8. An ex-girlfriend created a group with my other ex-girlfriends to complain that I am about to marry another man. They knew I am a bisexual man, but apparently that offends them now. Story 9. Not an ex, but when I was 19, I met a guy on Tinder. We didn't meet in person, but he claimed he wanted to find a way to get me pregnant while maintaining my virginity. I guess that would only be in vitro fertilization or a Jane the Virgin situation. When I asked why, he said, "I'll be stuck with him forever." I refused to meet him after that. Story 10. I left her in 2007 and moved a couple thousand miles away. Initially, I gave her the option to join me in the first year. She called at least 2 to 4 times a week for 2 years, and I stopped answering after the first year. She used different numbers and borrowed phones. The calls became less frequent but continued for a few more years. Around 2019, I stopped using social media. One day, I received an instant message from her. She told me she had been stalking me and noticed that I wasn't active on any social media. She wrote, "I don't want you to think I miss you or anything, but are you all right?" I immediately blocked her and anyone who even seemed to be her, and I never responded. Story 11. The day after we broke up, I was working the night shift. I closed up the store and didn't realize my ex was waiting in his car outside. He followed me home, and I didn't notice, but he sped up and hit my bumper, running me off the road. I went into a small ditch. Thankfully, my car wasn't totaled. However, he knew I didn't have insurance and my car wasn't registered, so I would have been fined before anything was done to him for hitting me. Story 12. When I broke up with him, he was convinced it was because I wanted to get back with my previous ex, which was not the case. However, that did not stop him from showing up at my ex's house at 3 a.m. looking for me, and he ended up getting arrested. Story 13. The relationship started out normal. It progressed to moving in together and joining our families. I found out too late that she was a closeted alcoholic with suicidal tendencies. For 4 years, I was up until 5 a.m. wrestling knives and pill bottles out of her hands because she would drink and become suicidal or abusive, resulting in significant verbal abuse. After she cheated on me, things went downhill. I finally had enough of what she was doing to me and my kids. So I said, "No, I'm not fighting you for those pills. I'm not encouraging you, but I'm not stopping you." I went to bed, and she took a bottle of pills. She called her friend, who called emergency services. I became the abusive ex in her family's eyes. I lost friends, my house, and my dog, but I'm no longer with her. During intimate moments, she wanted it so rough that she asked me to punch her in the head while she climaxed. I did not comply. That relationship aged me 15 years. I'm still dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder years later. Story 14. The second girl I had an intimate experience with. We met at the mall and kept seeing each other for about a week, walking around and holding hands. Eventually, we started finding little corners to kiss. We decided to seek some real privacy and rode our bikes to a park after dark. I had a sleeping bag strapped to my bike. We found a nearby house under construction, went up to the second floor, and used the sleeping bag. It was quite clumsy. Neither of us knew what we were doing, but I was smart enough to have a 3-pack of condoms. We were both too young, both younger than 15, and fell asleep afterward. I woke up because I thought a bug was on my arm, but it was the girl lightly tracing a line on the inside of my forearm with a razor blade. I jerked my arm away and asked, "What are you doing?" She said she found it on the floor and wanted to see if she could touch me so lightly that I wouldn't feel it, mentioning she had been doing it for a few minutes. She never knew where I lived, and I never contacted her again. Story 15. My child's mother has been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and sociopathic tendencies. There are numerous stories to share. Story 16. He was a total narcissist who claimed he had cancer when he did not. He said he lost his job because of his cancer, but he was actually fired. He also claimed his house burned down, which was not true. Story 17. My ex said and did a lot of unusual things. Eventually, we found out she had borderline personality disorder, but I suspect she may have other undiagnosed issues. Unfortunately, she never took her therapy seriously, which prolonged our discovery of her condition, and she preferred to treat her issues with alcohol. Here's a list of some of the things she did. She would hear voices of people criticizing her. She claimed to hear my dad talking about her when he was nowhere near her. She insisted she had above-average hearing or psychic powers. She would see what she called little people, which she described as shadow beings, sometimes shaped like humans and sometimes just dark clouds, hiding outside her bedroom window. This raises my suspicion that she had something else besides borderline personality disorder, as it doesn't typically include hallucinations. She claimed these little people would warn her if she was in danger or if people were criticizing her. She believed that whenever her ears were ringing, it was a sign that someone was talking about her. If it was her right ear, it meant they were saying negative things about her, and the first person who came to her mind was the one doing it. It was always her right ear ringing, and she often thought of my dad or someone from my family first. She killed a puppy we adopted. I wasn't there when it happened, but I heard a loud thump, and the dog yelped while running out of the room bleeding from his nose. She took him to the veterinarian and had him put down. I suspect she may not have taken him to the vet and just left him to die. She never provided any details about the veterinarian or what he said. She attempted suicide several times, sometimes for trivial reasons like not being allowed to adopt a Great Dane. She believed a Great Dane would be better suited to handle her than the dog that had died. At a family gathering, she chugged an entire bottle of wine and became extremely aggressive, screaming at people and breaking things. Eventually, she said she wanted to die and ran into the street, trying to get hit by a car. She did get hit, but the car was going slowly and didn't seriously harm her. Her uncles and brother tried to take her inside, and she pulled the front gate off its rails while screaming at her uncle to choke her and kill her. The next day, she was involuntarily admitted to a psychiatric hospital. Additionally, she was physically violent and emotionally abusive, cheating on me with multiple guys and constantly gaslighting me, even over small matters. That's why I never asked her for more details about the dog. By that point, I was accustomed to avoiding arguments with her. That's my story about my ex. We broke up almost 10 years ago, and I am much happier now. Story 18. When we were arguing while I was driving, she hit the steering wheel and made my car veer across 4 lanes of traffic, hit the curb, and fly into a church parking lot. That's when I knew she wasn't the one. Story 19. One who blamed me for having a sexual relationship with my niece, which is disturbing to believe. I tried to explain that these accusations are not true. Then I found out that she was unfaithful. Story 20. The mother of my daughters, my ex, has no boundaries. She doesn't know what should or shouldn't be shared. We have been divorced for 15 years. She has, in the past, told me about her blood clots during her period and shared details about her new boyfriends. I apologize if this is uncomfortable to read. Story 21. This was back in high school when I was dating a guy who turned out to be dating 5 other girls as well. He created different social media accounts to communicate with each of us, so we wouldn't notice. I found out after I ran into one of his other girlfriends at a party. Story 22. The one time I dated a girl isolated me from all my friends and family. She made advertisements looking for men to hook up with. After we broke up, she got a face tattoo that said, "Skank." Fitting. Story 23. After we broke up for good, she called her ex and in the middle of the night, went to my car, pried open the hood and cut several hoses and wires. The next day, of course, the car wouldn't start, and then I saw the damage. She was foolish because there were cameras in the apartment complex, and the police were called. They were charged with vandalism and had to pay for the damages, plus lost time at work. I was so glad when I moved far away from the city. Story 24. It is not easy to describe the situation. I lived with a man who led a double life. He pretended to work at night while seeing 2 women, one of whom was in a long-term relationship with him. When I discovered the truth, I met his long-term girlfriend. He had lied to her, claiming he had a daytime job while he was actually at home with me. He fabricated details and invented people from his work. He also told her that he no longer lived with me and that he was purchasing an apartment, showing her fake pictures. Additionally, he was stealing from me and claimed to others that my family and I owed him money, insisting that my apartment was his and that I had tricked him into taking it. Story 25. Not really an ex, but a girl told me over the phone that she tested positive for pregnancy the day after we hooked up. Then I received a call from someone who was with her, informing me that the test came back negative and she was lying to me. Thank goodness for the call return feature back in the day. Story 26. This is a long story because it was quite difficult. At the time, I had no backbone. I politely let him down multiple times, saying I wasn't interested, but he forced his way into my life. For example, when I was walking home, he would refuse to take no for an answer and insist on walking with me, claiming he was headed in that direction to visit a friend. He would impose hangouts at my place even when I told him I had a lot to do. He would come upstairs with me and then ask, "You're really not going to let me in?" He would grab my hand and force us to hold hands while walking home. Whenever I tried to let go, He would give me a hard time, asking, "Why not? What's wrong with doing this? I'm not a bad guy." During these forced hangouts, he would pressure me into intimacy and guilt me into going further, making me think that maybe I was the one being unreasonable. He constantly accused me of cheating and bullied me about trivial matters, such as the way my face naturally looked. If we were together, he would get upset if my attention drifted elsewhere and would try to coerce me into having sex to apologize. He would wake me in the middle of the night to argue and accuse me of infidelity. Eventually, we broke up after he watched my building at night and claimed to have seen a guy run and hide from my balcony. He forced his way into my apartment at 3 a.m., insisting, "You can stop all the lies now." I had to threaten to call the police to get him out. Then he demanded I return his sweater, claiming he would drive me to the subway station after work. He continued to accuse me of cheating and said he had given me a chance to come clean, only to leave me in a random parking lot to find my way home. He also accused me of having someone smash his car's windshield. About a week later, he apologized, saying, "I don't know why I did that. Merry Christmas. I am still angry about it to this day, but I never want to see him again." Story 27. I don't know if it was the time she stabbed me repeatedly in the back with metal-tipped darts, necessitating a struggle to wrestle the implement out of her hand in front of the man she was cheating on me with, so she could claim I was abusive, or the time she played chicken with another car while driving my vehicle with me in it down the highway, to see if I could trust her. I definitely should never have trusted her any further than I could throw her entire extended family. She was pretty light, so I could have easily tossed her a few feet if I wanted to. Story 28. Oh, he stalked me in my house, broke in, threatened to kill me, crossed the center line while coming at me in town, stole money from our kids' college fund, had me falsely arrested, and I was awarded multiple restraining orders that he broke but pleaded no contest. And of course, my favorite, he wants us to be friends. Story 29. Not very interesting, but she was trying to connect with me before knowing anything about me other than my name and a brief description from my friend, who is also her best friend. I ended up dating her since I hadn't been with anyone since I was 7, and that wasn't an actual relationship since we were just school kids. We chatted a lot and met in person a few times, even though she lived in a different town. Then, she messaged me on a Thursday just before midnight with 2 paragraphs explaining that I wasn't serious enough and that she wanted someone who was more serious. I didn't respond, but I thought, when in human history has someone had a serious relationship in early high school? Story 30. Not my ex, but my ex's former partner from our 20s. She took a baseball bat to his television, lied about being pregnant, drove an hour, and parked outside his apartment building all night after he said something on the phone that she didn't like. That man was not worth that much effort. Story 31. Dragged, kidnapped at knife point, and released by the sheriff's department. A restraining order was issued against him for $100,000, and the bail had changed 3 times. Story 32. He lied to me about his drug use. I thought he was at least relatively clean. Then he screamed at me in the hospital in front of the nurses when I tried to talk him out of leaving. He had a collapsed lung and had left multiple times only to return. The relationship lasted 3 months, and neither of us was good for each other, to be fair. Story 33. Let's just say she was so mad at me that she threw her Xbox in the pond behind our house. She also tried to stab our roommate with a screwdriver. Story 34. He hit me outside of the movie theater because a male friend of mine texted me, someone I wasn't supposed to talk to. He came to my dorm and threatened to create a scene and hit me again. He made a fake dating profile using my pictures and number, then played the victim to try to get me back. Story 35. She broke many of my belongings using a screwdriver. I ingested about 20 tablets of pain reliever in anger. That was not an enjoyable night. She claimed I ruined nearly every significant event because I didn't do things exactly her way. She loved to point out all the guys who seemingly had a crush on her or wanted to be with her. Apparently, that was almost every guy. There were many more warning signs I ignored because she was very attractive yet unpredictable, and I thought I could change her. Story 36. Someone snooped on my computer and accessed a forum I was on in the early 2000s. They started harassing an ex-partner of mine, and it escalated quickly. I only realized much later that it was her when I pieced things together. The relationship was intense, which is probably why I stayed involved for too long. Another person made a wild accusation that led to me meeting with a detective at the local police department. Thankfully, he saw through the deception immediately. Lastly, there was a girl I was infatuated with in my early 20s who treated me like her confidant. She was also a compulsive liar. Like a fool, I was devoted to her for nearly 2 years until one day I experienced a nervous breakdown and ended the relationship. For years after that, she attempted to contact me, even reaching out to my parents about a year ago, claiming I had hurt her deeply. Even decades later, she seems to have lost her grip on reality and has convinced herself that it's all my fault. I advised my mother to inform the authorities and file a complaint for harassment if it happens again. Story 37. She usually came to my place almost every day. One day, she was suspicious of me cheating on her. I think she always thought I was unfaithful. She rang the doorbell. I opened the door, went back to my room, and enjoyed the movie. She came in, furious, saying, "You are cheating on me. Where is she?" I told her it was not true and that she could look everywhere. Then she had the idea to smell my private area. She dropped my pants and started smelling. After 10 minutes, she calmed down and we snuggled while watching the movie, and we were intimate as usual. It was a typical day back then. Who smells someone like that? Story 38. My ex was a bipolar woman who spent about 1.5 years of our 3-year relationship in a mental institution, divided into 2 separate 7 to 8 month periods. During that time, I, young and naive, cared for her 2 children. It turned out that she cheated on me with a fellow patient during both of her stays there, with the second time being a full-on relationship with the other man while trying to expel me from the apartment. In the end, she burned her bridges because she played with fire. She was caught using methamphetamine with her new boyfriend, her children were taken away, her boyfriend left her, and I was finished with the abuse and manipulation. I did what I had to do and left. Not even 2 weeks later, I learned that she had fallen out of her second-floor apartment window while cleaning the outside of the window, resulting in lifelong paralysis from the neck down and severe speech impairment. When she got out of the extended hospital stay, she contacted me and sent me her blog, where she wrote about how she threw herself out of the window because the pain of losing you was too much. To this day, she still sends a direct message on Facebook to my current girlfriend every few months to check on us. I left her 9 years ago for reference. She was the biggest nut job I have ever known. Story 39. My ex stabbed me with a Bowie knife because I was playing online Scrabble too loudly with a friend while he was in bed. It left a noticeable scar, though. Story 40. I was drinking with my ex when he confessed that he would leave me in a heartbeat if the mother of his child wanted him back. I cried and then shut down. He freaked out and said he would take me home, but instead, he tried to crash the car into a creek, claiming it was the only way we would love each other. I had to steer the wheel to avoid the crash. A month later, I caught him cheating with his best friend's wife. He pinned me down for 6 hours so I wouldn't leave. I waited until he fell asleep and then walked home, never getting back with him again. He pretended to be Prince Charming but later became unpredictable. Story 41. He went to prison a few years after we broke up and blamed me, saying, "I told you that if you left me, I would have no reason to stay on the straight and narrow. You sold drugs in a country where you were legally not allowed to be." Story 42. I married my high school sweetheart after 4 years of dating. After we got divorced, he would constantly ask my friends what I was up to and sometimes follow me to the same places. I went to my hometown school football game and he was there. He approached a guy I had dated and been intimate with. He shook the new guy's hand and congratulated him for sleeping with me. A couple of years later, I dated a guy who used to be friends with my ex in high school. My ex had been the best man at the new guy's wedding 4 years prior. My ex said I was terrible for dating him and being intimate because of this. They hadn't hung out in over 2 years. I finally moved 3 hours away from my hometown to escape him constantly stalking me. Story 43. He lived with me in my apartment for over a month after we broke up because he was struggling financially. I told him when I ended the relationship that he could stay until he found a place. After he moved out, he began calling me, claiming he had changed and missed me. I kept avoiding him. I discovered he took some of my belongings from the apartment, such as towels, slippers, essential oils, and bed sheets, because he did not have any of those items. I told him it was okay to keep them since he needed them. 2 years later, he started harassing me and my family, claiming I owed him money, specifically $10,000. He said he hadn't mentioned it in 2 years because I supposedly told him he was the one and that we would end up together, which never happened. It turned out he was preparing to get married and had left the woman pregnant, likely thinking we would pay for his wedding and the child's christening. My parents and I blocked him on all platforms, and I warned him that if he harassed any of us again, I would seek a restraining order and pursue legal action for harassment. Story 44. She threatened to harm herself with a kitchen knife. When I expressed my belief that she did not truly want to take her own life, she attempted to stab me with the same knife. Story 45. I was dating a very abusive person and was having trouble leaving him. In short, I ended up going to prison, and that is how the relationship ended. It turns out he is now awaiting trial for a first-degree murder charge. Story 46. She mentioned that if we had a child and it was a boy, she would want to engage in inappropriate behavior with him. This was a 30-year-old woman. Story 47. She was dating my weed dealer while my dad was dying. That was about 7 years ago, and she is still angry about me to this day. Story 48. We broke up and she urinated, defecated, and vomited on me and my friend's clothes when she returned them to us. Story 49. He punched me in the back, told me he used to deal meth, and then broke up with me the next day. We were 16. Story 50. I have an ex who has made it clear that my whole family was troubled. I regret trying to change a kind Christian man. Story 51. He caused my dog to be hit by a car and then attempted to do it again the following year. He stalked me online and across the country, cloned my phone, and wiped my accounts so I did not have any of our texts or voice recordings for court. He bought a gun and threatened me with it. He abused my dog and his dog, sabotaged my vehicles, stole from me, and isolated me. He took videos of me showering and having sex without my permission and shared them online. Story 52. Oh God. Where to start? Every email I sent to her from work, she saved. After a huge argument, she went scorched earth and forwarded her grievances to everyone in the email chains I had ever sent. Before this, I had discussed moving out of my rental at the time. She deceived me, pretending to be a lady wanting a housemate, then stood me up and had friends see if I turned up at the meeting point. I caught her in bed with her ex. She claimed she owed him some money and was paying it off. She stalked me afterwards and created many fake profiles on dating sites. There weren't that many in the early 2000s. She put a keystroke logger on her own computer, let me log into my Hotmail account, then emailed all the women in my address book to tell them to stop contacting me as they were getting in the way of my relationship with her, then blocked them if they replied. I only found that out when she missed blocking one, and she replied without holding back. When I asked her what the reply was in response to, she forwarded me the email my ex sent. I asked my ex why she sent it, and she said she was protecting her interests. She was seeing a guy during our friends with benefits phase without me knowing, and sadly, she was pregnant. I said I would accept all responsibilities after a DNA test. She mumbled something about it not being mine anyway. The list goes on. She crammed a lot of unhinged behavior into 2 years. Story 53. This situation was pretty tame but still relevant. I was in a situationship with my roommate's sister for about 9 months. We agreed from the start to take things slow, but I suspect she had commitment issues. She was a tomboy, not just slightly masculine. She had very few feminine tendencies, likely due to the influence of her brothers during her formative years. One of the first times I met her family, she started wrestling with her younger brothers. She often playfully hit or shoved people, including my roommate and me. She only liked action movies and disliked romantic plots or subplots. Don't get me wrong, she was a really sweet girl, and she broke my heart when she said we should just be friends. To be honest, it's partly my fault for emotionally committing too strongly when she didn't. However, I now realize I don't want my children to grow up seeing their mother wrestling with their uncles on a regular basis. She did make me appreciate slight waves and curls, though. I thought I preferred straight hair before, but not anymore. Story 54. My ex would start a fight whenever I interacted with another female. This included greeting our mutual female friends and being friendly towards waitresses. There was one time when she screamed at me in public because a girl dropped her groceries and I helped pick them up. Basically, I was not allowed to be a decent or friendly person if the recipient was a woman. When I tried to end things, she literally said, "No, you can't." And because I was 18 and young, I thought, can she do that? And we stayed together for another 3 months. Regret. Story 55. My ex was preparing meals for me and secretly adding crushed sleeping pills to my portion. Each time, I fell into a deep sleep, waking up 10 hours later. He manipulated me into believing there was something wrong with me. My money was disappearing. While I was asleep, he called a sex line and then spoke with his student for hours. After each incident, he called a cab. When I woke up in the late morning to go to work, he was asleep next to me as if nothing had happened. Only 7 years later did I recognize the same aftertaste from the sleeping tablets when I had them prescribed by a doctor. I learned about his sleep routine from the phone records I requested when the bill became excessively high. Story 56. My ex-wife was relatively normal at first. We were roommates, and she love-bombed me, making me feel appreciated. I got her pregnant even though she told me she couldn't conceive, so I decided to be there for my daughter no matter what. I proposed and we got married. For the first 5 or 6 years, she was a good mother to our daughter, even though we didn't value the same things. Over time, our relationship began to falter. Looking back, it seems she never really had respect or consideration for me. I was just a means to an end, someone to provide for her. She never worked during the 10+ years we were together, which I was fine with since she primarily took care of our child and our home. It wasn't perfect, but it was okay. A few years ago, while walking with our daughter, she found an injured bird. She used to be a veterinary technician before we met, so she rehabilitated the bird. This experience awakened something in her. Soon after, she built a small aviary in the backyard and joined a bird rescue group. She became highly involved in this community, healing injured birds that people would bring to her. However, instead of returning the healed birds, she kept them in the aviary. She rebuilt it at least 5 times, making it larger each time. Initially, I supported her involvement, hoping she would turn it into a means to contribute to our household financially through donations. Instead, she accumulated 300 to 400 pigeons that needed daily feeding and care. When I objected to the state of our home and pointed out that she no longer had time to care for our daughter or manage our household, she would respond that no one else does what she does and that these birds needed saving. Her focus on the birds grew to the point of neglecting everything else. I would come home to find my 8-year-old daughter preparing food for the birds and cleaning up after them. Strangers frequently arrived with injured birds, and she would tell them to stop by since she was too busy to talk on the phone. I often spent my first hour at work calling her to ensure our daughter got to school on time. Sometimes, she would let her walk alone. The laundry room was piled high with clothes, mixed with bird towels, so our laundry would get contaminated. She saw no problem with this. Things escalated when someone contacted the city about the aviary, which was not permitted. We had to tear it down. She insisted I called the city about my own property and claimed that I no longer wanted the birds. We were given 3 weeks to remove them and dismantle the aviary. Luckily, through her bird rescue group, she met another bird hoarder with a property about an hour away. She arranged to transport all her birds there and essentially left, ignoring my calls. Before leaving with around 300 healthy birds, she moved in a homeless single mother of 3, Sam, to take care of the sick birds and help with our child. This was the last straw for me. She moved in an unstable person without consulting me. Sam and her children were a handful and negatively impacted my daughter's well-being. I managed to get them out of my house, and I subsequently filed for divorce. We reached an agreement where I became the primary parent and took care of our daughter while she lived at the country house with her birds and those of other bird hoarders, roughly 500 to 600 pigeons, all inside the house. And that's where we stand today. She abandoned her daughter to care for pigeons for the rest of her life. Story 57. It was all online, but my ex was 28 and I was 15. Long story short, he convinced me to send explicit messages and he showed me how to masturbate. So, I had my first orgasm because of an inappropriate relationship. Story 58. I don't think anything beats being placed on a list by a psychopathic ex and then having your entire country, along with the most powerful nation in the world, destroy your life without mercy. Story 59. I won't get into how bad the stalking was after I left him, except to say he called me from over 300 different numbers after I blocked him. He would walk into a gas station and say that his phone was dead and he needed to let his girlfriend know where he was. I changed my phone number on Valentine's Day after receiving 27 of these calls in a row. For years later, I ran into him and his girlfriend. I gave her my number because she clearly wasn't okay. Long story short, they broke up, and I let her come over to vent over pancakes. She wanted to talk to him and gave him my address. I thought she didn't tell him who she was with, but the next day my tires were slashed, and an entire litter box was dumped over my car. He left a trail of cat waste up to my door. Crazy individual. Story 60. I will list some events, though this is not in any accurate timeline. This occurred at the beginning of COVID, and I am very thankful I took a break when I did because the combination of an ex and COVID turned out to be problematic. So, here are the highlights. She would burst into the house whenever she felt like it and start an argument. On one occasion, she broke into the house and assaulted me, leaving scratches all over my face. We had been broken up for a month or two by that point, and I had hooked up with someone else, which she found out about. She claimed that I had given her a sexually transmitted disease, but I hadn't. All tests came back clear, and we hadn't had sex for quite a while before the breakup. At one point, she refused to leave the house until I gave her money for a mattress. Neither of us had paid for it, but at that point, it was worth £300 to get her out of the house. I am not wealthy. I was working 2 to 3 minimum wage jobs at a time, which kept me busy. Her parents were multimillionaires and would brag occasionally, but if that makes them happy, so be it. She broke into the house, took the cat, emptied the litter tray onto a curtain I made for the washroom, smashed every glass, plate, bowl, and mug, but was somewhat considerate enough to leave me one of everything. She spray-painted profanities on the walls in chalk, so it wasn't too bad. She sliced up the mattress, cut the head off a dildo, and left it under the duvet with a knife shoved down the urethra, which was quite shocking and creative. Another time, she barged into the house to use the shower and proceeded to have a loud personal moment while screaming my name, making it quite awkward. I stepped out for a bit since her expensive van didn't have a shower. She falsely told me she was pregnant and kept the lie going for as long as possible. She arrived in an unstable state with multiple pages of what I can only describe as bizarre erotic fiction about what our lives might have been like if we had stayed together. There was a lot of talk about intimacy and new beginnings. I walked her back to her van, where she sat smoking and occasionally crying while I wrote her a new story in which her life was beautiful and she fell in love with a handsome Portuguese man named João. Somehow, she discovered where my new partner and her child lived and left a bunch of juggling clubs outside their house so that I could play daddy. That was a bit unsettling and came as a surprise since it had been about a year since our initial breakup. Throughout this period, she made plenty of threats of self-harm. I was not mistreating her or being unkind. I spent most of the 7 years we were together trying to build a life and helping her achieve her goals because I understood her background. I also tried to help her reduce her cannabis usage since she wanted to quit. It was a life lesson, and despite how difficult it was, it helped me figure some things out. So while it wasn't a total loss, it was quite a nightmare. I will never date an Aries again. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.